My father is Armenian from Beirut, born in Syria, grew up in Beirut. My mother is actually not actually Armenian. My mother is actually a Filipino. They met in New York City, as everyone does. My father's parents are also from Beirut in Syria. My grandfather was actually an orphan from the genocide.
And your work, you also are involved in developments in Armenia. I know you go to Tumo Center, do a lot of work there with other U.S. Armenians. Can you tell about this work and why is that important?
Yeah, totally. So I'm on the board of directors of the Tumo Center in Yerevan. I think education is seriously important, especially like connected education, like how to become proficient in the digital age. Like the world has become smaller because of the internet in some way. So I think things like the Tumo Center really enable younger children to get connected to the rest of the world and sort of think beyond their borders. And then on top of that, about once a year, I've been co-hosting a conference in Armenia talking about technology, talking about how to grow companies, how to do engineering management. The next cycle will happen in October. We're going to talk about product management and business management as well. Because again, like I think like with the Soviet education in mathematics and science, with the ease of access to computers, with the connected world, I think Armenia is so well poised, and I think it's playing out to actually participate in this global economy. Like there are these small startups showing up all over Armenia. There are Armenian Americans and Armenians from other countries who are so interested in helping that I think like this is the time, this is the opportunity for Armenia to sort of step up into the global world.
Do you see that in Armenian youth? You go and meet with them in Tumo. Do you see that?
Yeah, no. If you go to the Tumo Center and talk to the kids there, or you go to AUA or whatever and talk to the students there, you can absolutely see like that they are starting to figure out what's it mean to be, well, one, what's it mean to be an Armenian in the world, but two, what's it really like to start participating and potentially launching products or having ideas, having conversations in the global community. Like you see this in kids who are just like, I've never programmed before, but I made a mobile app, and now they're on the App Store, and they're sort of like celebrating that. So you can totally see Armenian youth and older children and college students sort of reaching to that point where they want to launch things and like engage in a broader way.
On the launching new things, can you talk a little bit about your work here? What you do? That's very important. What are you developing?
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm the Senior Director of Software at Uber's Advanced Technology Group. Specifically, I'm in charge of all the software for self-driving across all of Uber, whether it be passenger carrying cars or semi-trucks.
And when will we have the self-driving?
I think we're a long time away from getting self-driving cars everywhere. So right now in Pittsburgh, you can actually call an UberX and a self-driving car might show up and pick you up. There are a few roaming the streets at any given time. So calling an UberX, it might just show up and pick you up, and it drives you to wherever you want to go within Pittsburgh. But to get into the world at large, I think we'll still years away from that. Like it's a combination of technology, regulatory policy, societal acceptance. Like all of those need to sort of play out before we can launch this in the world at large.
And what are the major challenges? What do you see? How do you see it happening? Any major things that prevent you other than just the traffic?
The number one challenge is generally still technology in the grand scheme of things. Like if you get into one of our cars here in Pittsburgh, then there's still someone in the front seat monitoring the entire situation. And on rare occasions, they actually do touch the wheel or touch the gas or touch the brake. Most of the time it's hands off. But in order for it to be widely deployed, they can never touch the wheel. They can never touch the gas. So like that word occasional needs to go to zero pretty quickly in order to pull it off. And so it's fundamentally a technological problem that we need to overcome first.
Can you talk about your team and their input and whether it's important to join international efforts or get best people?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we have one of the world's best single-purpose robotics teams on the planet right now. And so our philosophy is sort of like put the best minds at the problem. So we try to find the best minds no matter where they might be in the world and bring them to task on what we think is the largest challenge to sort of redefine how cities operate, redefine how transportation works, change the world in a lot of ways. So yeah, so you could say we have a very international team, but what we specifically have done is try to find the best talent no matter where it is and bring them to task on this problem.
For last months, there were a lot of talks about hacking. Do you have such a problem? And actually, that's a dangerous situation if someone hacks the self-driving
Sure.
car, right? How you
Yeah,
deal
so
with this kind of challenge?
2 years ago, there was a widely published hacking report of two people who hacked a Jeep, some form of Jeep, maybe a Jeep Cherokee. And it was published in Wired. The Wired reporter volunteered. He was driving his car down the road, and these two hackers from St. Louis connected into the Jeep, which was in Washington, D.C., and disabled it. Jeep has since fixed the issue, so it's not an issue on their fleet anymore. Our response was to hire the two hackers. So those two hackers now work on this team specifically to work on securing these vehicles.
The self-driving car, it's also a psychological challenge for a person because you sit down and you trust into a machine, right? So say. How do you deal with these kind of issues, and how do you see these issues to be resolved?
I mean, part of the reason we're doing trials on the road is to understand exactly situations like this, like understand how people react when one of these cars pull up, how will they react when they get into the car, and the goal is not to talk to our driver that's in the car itself, but actually they interact with the computer themselves. So one is we're still learning this as we're on the road, and we don't only care about people who are in the car, but drivers of cars next to us, for example. Like, what will they think if one of these cars pulls up next to them and they're driving down the highway side by side? So right now, I can say that in almost all circumstances, people have actually been excited to get into the vehicle, and when they're driving next to it, they're actually more curious than anything else about what the vehicle is doing or thinking. So at least in our preliminary testing on the road, this actually turns out to be not as big of a concern as one would think. However,
Go ahead.
However, what we do, we also are mindful of the fact that there are people in the front seat. So what we have been doing is sort of like working on what are the user interfaces in the back of the car, what kind of information does the car need to tell the passenger in the back to make the person comfortable. So for example, what we do right now is if you're in the back seat of the car, you could see there's a big screen mounted in the back, and you can see a visualization of what the car sees right now. You can see all the laser points. You can see it classifying, oh, that's a car in front of you. That's a pedestrian walking across the road. So it gives you confidence that the car is seeing the world as if you would see it as a person. And then after that, I think it's just a lot of as we get on the road and demonstrate to people that, like, we've taken Uber passengers on it, like people have not touched the wheel in N number of miles, et cetera, that we hope that sort of like builds momentum of saying that, like, yes, lots of other people have done it, it seems to be safe, and this will sort of just make society accept it in a bunch of different ways.
And how do you see it? Is this self-driving car going to be safer than a real driver car or not? And will it make driving overall safer, or will it make us just more dependable on machines?
Well, I mean, remember, so right now there's about 1.5 million deaths a year due to car accidents. 95% of those, if I remember the statistics correctly, are due to human error. So I think, like, we can make a massive dent in changing those statistics. Like, the nice thing about a computer is that a computer doesn't get bored. So, like, I've taken people in the car and we've been in stop and go traffic for a long time, and people end up commenting, this car drives better in stop and go traffic than I would. And it's true. It's because it doesn't get bored. It just does it over and over and over again. So yeah, I think that fundamentally this type of technology will make driving safer overall. I think that's great. I also think it has a potential in the long run to reduce the number of cars on the road as well, because we can sort of like change the demand and flux of the cars depending on what we actually need to do. It'll fundamentally change cities. So I think it has like both short-term effects of like computers just can potentially drive better than humans. They don't get bored, they don't get tired, they don't drink and drive, they don't do all these things. And in the long run, I think it could fundamentally change the landscape of cities and transportation, which will also make the world safer in a bunch of different ways.
The question is, about you. What drives you? What gives you drive? What inspires you?
So what inspires me? I think I've done a whole bunch of very different things for my career. I never kind of settle on one thing. I did computer science and architecture, like building architecture when I was in college. I sort of helped start a bunch of companies. I did Twitter for a while. So it really just comes down to this a real desire to learn something different. I'm one of the few people at this place at Uber who's never worked on robots before. And the reason I came was mainly I want to learn about robots. That's the reason I showed up here. I know a lot about software, but I know nothing about robots. So I have this strong desire to learn. But I think the second is this weird desire to just have really good stories to tell your grandchildren. So it's just I've flown on NASA's zero gravity trainer. I've done all these other crazy things, but it's mostly just to have really good stories I could tell my grandchildren and somehow learn something new along the way. I think that's the real thing. It's just I really want to learn and try new things every single day.
Is there anything I didn't ask? Anything at all you'd like to add? Maybe anything important?
No?
Do you speak Armenian?
Very little. I understand Armenian much better than I speak it. I speak it more at a sixth grade level. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I walk around Yerevan just fine. I'll just respond to everyone in English in the process.